We've had two forms so far in this unit. The first one that we did was slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. M stands for what? Slope. And b is where it crosses the y-axis, which is called the y-intercept. So we started out just graphing in slope-intercept form. Then last week we did point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals your slope times x minus x1. And the reason why you would use point slope is if they gave you 1 point and a slope, or if they just gave you 2 points and they said, okay, make a line or tell me the equation of a line. So if they gave you either of these things, you would use point slope form and you would be able to graph it, or you'd be able to write an equation from it. Today we're doing the third form, which is called standard form. So that's what your notes are all about. It's not either of these. And in this form, you'll see there's a reason why you would use this form over other forms, and you'll see very quickly what that would be. So the essential question says, what information does standard form reveal about our line? Hannah will spend $150 on music festival tickets. Reserved seat tickets cost $25 and general admission tickets cost $10. How can you represent this equation with a linear equation? So first of all, the word linear right here, that means we're wanting a line. Okay, every equation that we've done so far, we get a line from. So linear means line. The first 4 letters of it are line. So what do we know? We know we have $150 to spend on music festival tickets. We know general admission tickets cost $25 a piece. And we know, oh no, sorry, that was not general admission. I read it wrong. Yeah, general admission costs $10 and reserved tickets cost $25. So reserved tickets $25, general admission $10. So that is what we are given. That's what we know from the words that it gave us. What do we not know, and how do you represent them? Right, we don't know how many tickets. So the reason why you would use a form like this instead of the other two that we've been using is you've got two completely separate things this time. You've got reserved tickets that cost one price, and you've got general admission tickets that cost another price. You can't use the same letter for that because they don't cost the same. So we'll say that X, we'll say X is going to stand for, that does not look like an X, I'll start over. X is going to stand for reserved tickets. If X stands for reserved tickets, we can't use X again for general admission tickets because they don't cost the same amount of money. So we'll use Y for the general admission tickets. This is the reason why you would choose to use this form, is if you have two things that you're looking at that cost different amounts. So now we're going to write an equation. We know how much she spends. It tells us right at the beginning. We know it's going to equal $150. We just don't know how many of each. So we know that reserved tickets cost $25. And we know that we just said X stands for reserved. So 25X. We're going to add the general admission tickets that we're buying. We know those cost $10 each, and their letter is Y. This is standard form, where you have an X and a Y on the same side. And the whole point of it is because you have two things that cost different amounts. So this is what we're writing right here. This is standard form. The general equation for standard form is right here. AX plus BY equals C, where A, B, and C are integers. That's just a fancy word for saying numbers. So A, B, and C stand for just numbers. And A and B cannot be 0. So like that, we can't have 0 tickets because that would not make a line. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're not selling anything, you're not going to make a line. So we're going to move on. How is standard form different from slope-intercept form? Slope-intercept is more straightforward. So slope-intercept tells you the slope. Sorry, this is really messy. It tells you the slope. And y-intercept. Standard form, did you guys see the letter M anywhere in that standard form? So it does not straight up tell you the slope. Standard form does not tell you the slope at all. It just tells you what is how much. So the difference is slope-intercept tells you the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so we're going to start graphing. So they give you this equation, 3x minus 2y equals 12. What you're going to do is you're going to substitute, which means replace one of the letters, and you're going to put a 0 in for it. So it says find the x-intercept, which means substitute 0 in for y. So we're going to keep the x just how it is. It's going to be the letter x. And when we see a y, we're going to replace it with the number 0. I'm not trying to make that 20. I'm taking that 2 times 0. So if you want to find the x-intercept, you put a 0 in for y. So I'm going to solve this now. I've got 3x, and what is negative 2 times 0? 0. I don't have to put plus 0. There's no point in that, but it will still equal 12. My last step is to divide by 3 on both sides, and that's going to tell you what x equals. So what would x be? Okay, so we know when x is 4, we had a y of 0. That is your x-intercept. That's a fancy way of saying this is where x crosses my, or this is where my line crosses my x-axis. So I'm going to plot this point on my graph. If this, remember, this is the x and this is the y. So I'm going to go over 4 on my x-axis and up 0. And that's my first point. So now we have the x-intercept, but we still need to figure out the y-intercept. So the only difference is if you want to find the y-intercept, now you put in a 0 for x. So it's going to say 3 times 0, and then it's minus 2y equals 12. What is 3 times 0? So I don't have to say that. I'm just going to cancel it out. I don't have to say 0 minus 2y because it's like you're adding or subtracting nothing to it. There's no point in saying that. But what I can do now is solve negative 2y equals 12. So I'm going to divide by negative 2 on both sides, and y would equal, yes. So we actually want to make this a point, and remember, x always comes first. We made our x 0. And when we made x 0, we got y was negative 6. So this right here is the point that we're going to graph. 0, negative 6. So I'm going to go over 0, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's my second point, and hopefully your line is going to look better than mine. Ooh. There we go. There's your line. So that's how you graph in standard form. You can, if you don't like that, you can change it to slope-intercept form. It just takes a little bit of work. We'll see if they ask us to do that later. I'm not sure if they will or not. Okay, so up here it says, what does the graph of ax plus by equals c look like when a is equal to 0? So if you don't have an a at all and you're just left with something like 2y equals 6. So what we'll do is we'll solve for y. I'm just going to make it bigger so you can see. We're going to divide by 2 on both sides. So y is equal to what? 3. But there is no x in my problem. So this is the only answer that I get. The equation y equals 3 does not include an x. So x has no effect on the y values. The value of y is 3 for every x value. Therefore, the graph of y equals 3 is a horizontal line. And I'm going to show you how I would prefer to graph this, because just thinking about it is confusing to me. I always make a t-chart. X always goes first in my t-chart. Y always goes second in my t-chart. It tells me y is 3. So the numbers underneath y are all going to be 3. You can put 2 points. You can put 3 points. It doesn't matter. I just put 2. Then I get to choose whatever number I want for x. As long as it's going to fit on your graph, you can put it down for x. So I'm going to use easy ones, just 1 and 2. And now I'm going to graph those points. So I'm going to go over 1. So like I'm treating this like an ordered pair. I'm going to go over 1, up 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to make a point. I'm going to start back at 0, 0, and then I'm going to go over 2, up 3, and make a point. And that's how I choose to graph those, because I don't like, it's kind of hard to memorize whether you've got a horizontal or a vertical. But if that's something you're interested in, if it says y equals a number, you know it's going to be horizontal. It says, in other words, when there is no x, the line is flat or horizontal, whichever you prefer to call it. We talked about this yesterday when we played our Kahoot. When you have a line like this that's a flat line, it doesn't have a slope, so the slope would be considered 0 slope. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this time there is no y. So when we solve this, we've got 3x equals 6. We're going to divide by 3 on both sides, so it would be x is equal to 2. So this time we have no y in our equation. It's just x equals 2. So last time, if y was a horizontal line, what do you think x equals will be? Yeah. So x equals will be a vertical line. If you want to just memorize that and say, okay, I know if it says x equals, please don't do that. If I know it says x equals, then it's going to be vertical. If I know it says y equals, I know it's going to be horizontal. Me memorizing stuff isn't my strong suit, so I always just put it in a t-chart. If it says x is 2, I put 2's underneath x, and I can pick whatever I want for y. And then I just plot those points. So I'm going to go over 2, up 1. I'm going to go over 2, up 2. And then I can make my line. So the rest of this, when there is no x, the line is vertical. Oh yeah, I was reading the top one, sorry. When there's no y, the line is vertical. Okay. Now we're going to look at some word problems. This is another reason why you would use this form or over slope intercept or point slope form. Word problems, I mean, a lot of times they'll have more than one thing for sale. And I know on my paper, and it's kind of hard to see, one of them is too dark to see the price, but I'm pretty sure this one says $10 a pound. This little like can thing right here. And this one says 8 per pound. So if you can't read that, that's what they say. Tamira is making trail mix. She has $40 to spend on a mixture of almonds and cashews and wants the same amount of almonds as cashews. How can she determine how many pounds of each she needs to buy? So what we know is we have $40 to spend. We know almonds, I'm just going to use A, is $8 per pound. And we know cashews is $10 per pound. What do we not know? We don't know the amount we're trying to get of each. So we just have to assign almonds and cashews a letter. Typically, you'll use X and Y in these equations. I understand you could use A and C if you wanted to, but I'm going to use X and Y. So almonds, we're going to use X. And cashews, we're going to use Y. So now all we have to do is come up with an equation and solve it to see how much of each she could buy. So we know it equals $40, so that's where I always start. It tells you typically how much it's going to cost. We know almonds cost $8 a pound, and we know the letter for almonds is X, so 8X. We know cashews cost $10 a pound, and the letter we want to use is Y. So the equation that we've got is 8X plus 10Y equals 40, and now we're going to solve. So what you're going to do, if you want to solve for Y, you will put a 0 in for X. If you want to solve for X, you put a 0 in for Y. There's some unnecessary work that we showed last time that you don't have to show. You know, eventually, like you can, I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to make a square. And I'm going to color this square in. There we go. So what you can do is you can like put your finger over the X and solve for Y. You can put your finger over the Y and solve for X. And then just, you don't have to show all that work with the zeros. So that's what I'm going to do here. You just use your finger instead of having this. So I went ahead and covered up my Y, and I'm going to solve 8X equals 40. When I cover up my Y like that, that is the same thing as saying Y is 0. So when I do that, I get X is equal to 5. So when Y was 0, X was 5. So the point would be 5, 0. Now, since I covered up my Y already, now I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to cover up my X, and I'm going to solve the opposite. So when I do that, I've got 10Y equals 40, which leaves me with Y equals 4. So when X was 0, Y is 4. Those are the two points that they've plotted on the graph, like below it. It says, what do your answers mean? So what does X stand for again? So in this case, remember, X comes first and Y comes second. So we would have 5 pounds of almonds and if we had no cashews. So that's what the first point means. The second point right here, the 0, 4, if we have no almonds, we would have 4 pounds of cashews. So that is what those points technically mean. The last thing it says is, how does the equation change if she has $60 to spend on a mixture of almonds and cashews? How many pounds can she buy if she only buys cashews or almonds? So basically, you would do the exact same thing, except for now it would equal $60, not $40. So it would be 8X plus 10Y equals $60 because now she has $60, not $40. And you would do the exact same thing. I would cover up my X or my Y, whichever you want. Let me go get that little. So if I want to cover up my X or my Y and solve for it, you can. So if I cover up my Y, I get X equals 60 divided by 8. What's that? So when Y is 0, X is 7.5. And then if I covered up the other one, If I made x 0, y would be 6. So it's the same thing. You would say if I had 0 cashews, I could get 7.5 pounds of almonds. If I had 0 almonds, I could get 6 pounds of cashews. So this is standard form. Do you guys understand how to solve it? If you like doing the 0 thing, you can do that. Like you can make x 0 and solve it out, and then make y 0 and solve it out. It's really up to you. So that is standard form. That's the only other form we're adding in before we take a test.